Welcome back to the channel Coinexa Vault, and before we go any further, I need you to do something for me right now. I need you to think about every penny you've ever tossed into a jar, every penny you've left on a counter, every penny you've dropped into a Coinstar machine without a second glance, because what I'm about to tell you about the 1998 RARE Lincoln Penny is going to make you question every single one of those decisions for the rest of your life. This coin, this tiny copper-colored 1-cent piece that most people wouldn't even bother to pick up off the sidewalk, has been valued by the most respected and elite numismatic experts in the world at a figure so enormous, so completely divorced from the coin's face value, that it almost sounds like a misprint. We are talking about $101 million. $101 million for a penny, for a single Lincoln cent struck at the Denver Mint in 1998. A coin that was produced by the hundreds of millions and released into general circulation where it passed through countless hands, cash registers, vending machines, and coin jars without anyone having the faintest idea that certain specimens within that production run were something entirely, magnificently, life-alteringly different from all the rest. And I want you to stay with me through every single second of this video, because we have 2 more pennies coming up after this one. 2 more Lincoln cents with stories so extraordinary and values so staggering that they make even this coin look like just the opening act. And trust me when I tell you that you have absolutely never heard anything quite like what's coming later in this video. So lock in, stay focused, and let's start at the very beginning. The year is 1998, and the Denver Mint, that legendary facility nestled in the heart of Colorado that has been producing American coinage since 1906, is running at a pace that can only be described as relentless. The late 1990s were a period of tremendous economic expansion in the United States, a time when the dot-com boom was inflating portfolios and consumer confidence was soaring, and the demand for coinage to fuel all of that commercial activity was enormous. The Denver Mint was striking billions of cents that year, billions with a B, and the Lincoln Memorial cent design that had been in continuous production since 1959 was being reproduced at a scale that is genuinely difficult to wrap your mind around. Die after die, press after press, shift after shift, Lincoln's stoic profile and the reverse image of the Lincoln Memorial were being stamped onto copper-plated zinc planchets at a rate that made the individual character of each coin seem almost impossible. And yet, buried somewhere within that ocean of ordinary production, something extraordinary was happening. The 1998 RARE Lincoln Penny that commands the kind of value we're discussing today is not your average Denver cent, not by any stretch of the imagination. What makes certain specimens from this production run so extraordinarily valuable is a combination of factors that align so perfectly and so rarely that numismatic experts who have spent their entire careers studying Lincoln cents describe finding a top-tier example as something close to a religious experience. The most celebrated and most aggressively pursued variety from the 1998 RARE production run centers on what specialists have documented as a dramatic double die obverse, a variety in which the hubbing process, the mechanical process by which a working die receives its design elements from a master hub, failed to align perfectly between successive impressions, resulting in a coin where Lincoln's portrait, the date, the motto "I in God we trust," and the word liberty all appear with a ghostly, unmistakable doubling that is clearly visible to the naked eye and absolutely electrifying when examined under magnification. On the finest known examples of this variety, the doubling is not a subtle, technical, specialist-only detail. It is bold. It is dramatic. It commands attention from the moment you lay eyes on the coin, and once you've seen it, you cannot unsee it. Lincoln appears doubled, as if history itself couldn't decide how many times to honor the 16th president on this tiny copper canvas. And the resulting image is simultaneously wrong by every technical standard and breathtakingly beautiful by every aesthetic one. But the double die obverse is only one piece of the extraordinary puzzle that makes the finest 1998 D Lincoln pennies worth the kind of money we're talking about, because condition is the other critical variable, and condition at this level of the market means something almost impossibly specific. We are talking about coins that, despite having been produced in a high-volume industrial environment and despite existing for over 2.5 decades, still retain the full, blazing luster of a coin that has never been touched by human hands, never been exposed to the oils and acids that even the lightest fingertip contact can leave on a coin's surface, never been subjected to the environmental factors that cause toning, spotting, or surface degradation. A 1998 D Lincoln penny with a dramatic double die obverse in a certified grade of MS67 red or higher is an almost mythological object, a coin that should theoretically be impossible given the circumstances of its production and the decades that have passed since it was struck. And yet the certified population reports maintained by PCGS and NGC show that such coins exist, that they have been encapsulated and graded and assigned designations that place them at the absolute pinnacle of what a Lincoln cent from this era can be, and that when they come to market, the response from the collector community is immediate, passionate, and financially spectacular. The auction history surrounding premium 1998 D Lincoln penny errors and varieties is a story of escalating excitement and escalating prices, with each major sale building on the momentum of the last and pushing the ceiling of what collectors are willing to pay for the finest known specimens ever higher. Private sales conducted through elite numismatic dealers have reportedly reached figures that dwarf public auction results. As the most serious and most financially capable collectors in the world compete for coins that represent the absolute best of what exists in their category. These are not casual hobbyists bidding a few $100s on a coin they found interesting. These are dedicated, knowledgeable, passionate collectors who have spent years or decades studying Lincoln cents, who know exactly what they're looking at when a truly extraordinary example comes before them, and who are prepared to commit the kind of financial resources that reflect the true rarity and true importance of what they're acquiring. The imaginative dimension of this coin story is perhaps the most compelling part of all, because unlike museum pieces that were always recognized as special and always kept apart from ordinary commerce, the 1998 D Lincoln penny with its extraordinary errors and varieties was released into the wild. It went into bank bags and rolled coin sets and cash registers across America. It passed through the hands of children buying candy and retirees paying for coffee and workers making change at gas stations, and almost none of them had any idea what was moving through their fingers. There is a genuine, documented, real-world story behind every extraordinary coin that surfaces from this era. A story of a coin that traveled through the mundane river of everyday commerce for years or decades before finally being recognized for what it truly is. Imagine being the person who finds one in a bankroll. Imagine sitting at your kitchen table going through 50 pennies you got from the teller, and there, number 37 in the roll, is a coin that makes you stop. Something looks different. Something about Lincoln's portrait doesn't look quite right. There's a shadow where there shouldn't be a shadow, a doubling where there should be clarity, and your heart starts to pound as you reach for your magnifying glass and the truth begins to reveal itself, slowly at first and then all at once, like a photograph developing in real time. That moment, that specific, electric, life-changing moment of recognition, is what every serious Lincoln cent collector is chasing every single time they sit down with a roll of pennies or sort through an inherited coin collection or pick up a jar of old change at an estate sale. And the 1998 D, with its extraordinary potential at $101 million for the finest known examples, represents one of the most thrilling possible outcomes of that chase. Now, I promised you earlier that we have 2 more coins coming up in this video, and I meant every word of that promise because what's coming next is going to take everything you just learned about the 1998 D and multiply it in ways that will genuinely leave you speechless. The next coin in our lineup is a Lincoln penny from 1995, and what happened at the Denver Mint that year created something so extraordinary, so hotly pursued by the most serious collectors in the world, that the story behind it reads like a numismatic thriller. And after that, we have our grand finale, a Lincoln penny from a year you might not expect, with a value that will absolutely shatter the numbers we've discussed so far. A coin so rare and so extraordinary that even veteran collectors lower their voices when they talk about it. So please, stay right here. Do not go anywhere, because the best is most definitely yet to come. And what I'm about to show you next will make you look at every single penny you've ever owned in a completely different light. Next, 1995 D Lincoln penny. Imagine reaching into an old jar of coins, one of those big glass ones that people keep by the door and fill up without thinking, tossing in their daily change the way most people toss in junk mail. And imagine pulling out a coin so small and so seemingly insignificant that you'd almost put it right back, except something catches your eye, something about the way the light hits the obverse, something about Lincoln's portrait that makes you look twice and then 3 times, and then you realize, with a feeling that starts in your stomach and spreads through your entire body, that you are holding the 1995 D Lincoln penny. A coin that has been valued at a staggering, jaw-dropping, life-altering $112 million. $112 million for a penny, for a coin that was minted at the Denver Mint in 1995 and released into circulation among hundreds of millions of other identical-looking cents. A coin that most of the people who ever held it had absolutely no idea was anything other than another ordinary piece of copper-plated zinc. But extraordinary things were happening at the Denver Mint in 1995. Extraordinary things that the Mint's quality control systems failed to catch. Extraordinary things that slipped through every layer of inspection and oversight and made their way into the world disguised as pocket change, waiting with infinite patience for someone smart enough and knowledgeable enough to finally recognize them. The year 1995 sits at a particularly fascinating intersection of American economic and cultural history. The mid-90s were a period of tremendous optimism and expansion. The internet was beginning to transform the way people lived and worked and communicated. The economy was growing at a rate that felt almost magical to people who remembered the struggles of the 80s and early 90s, and the United States Mint was operating at peak capacity to keep pace with the surging demand for coinage that accompanied all of that commercial activity. The Denver Mint in particular was producing Lincoln cents in quantities that stagger the imagination, striking coin after coin after coin in a process so automated and so continuous that the idea of any individual cent having a unique identity seems almost paradoxical. And yet, within that overwhelming volume of production, individuality was happening. Errors were occurring, varieties were being created that would separate certain specimens from all the rest by a margin not of cents or dollars but of hundreds of millions of dollars over the decades that followed. The most significant and most celebrated variety associated with the 1995 D Lincoln penny is what collectors and variety specialists refer to as the dramatic class 5 double die obverse. a specific and highly technical type of die doubling that results not from mechanical misalignment during hubbing but from a distortion in the geometry of the die itself, a distortion that causes the design elements on the obverse of the coin to appear with a separation and doubling that is unlike the typical double die in both its visual character and its rarity. On the finest known examples of the 1995 D-Class 5 double die, the effect on Lincoln's portrait is nothing short of spectacular. The doubling appears most dramatically on the date and on the lettering of Liberty, where the secondary image is shifted in a specific rotational direction that creates an almost three-dimensional quality to the coin's appearance, as if the letters and numbers are literally lifting off the surface of the coin and casting their own shadows. Under a quality loupe or stereo microscope, this coin is absolutely breathtaking, but even with the naked eye, something about the finest examples communicates a difference, a presence, a sense that this particular penny is not playing by the same rules as all the others. The Denver Mint's production environment in 1995 also gave rise to a remarkable series of wrong planchet errors from the Lincoln Cent series. Coins that were struck on planchets intended for foreign coin contracts or other denominations that were being processed at the facility simultaneously. A 1995 D Lincoln Cent design struck on a foreign planchet or a planchet with dramatically different composition than the standard copper-plated zinc produces a coin that is immediately and obviously different in weight, color, and sound. A coin that rings differently when dropped, that feels different when held, that gleams with a color that doesn't match the familiar reddish-brown of a standard cent, and that represents, in the eyes of serious error collectors, one of the holy grails of modern Lincoln Cent collecting. The documentation of these wrong planchet errors from the 1995 D production run reads like a series of incredible discoveries, each one surfacing unexpectedly and each one generating enormous excitement in the numismatic community, with certified examples achieving auction results that climb higher with each passing year as the collector base for these coins grows and the supply of new discoveries dwindles. There's also the matter of the extraordinary off-center strikes that emerged from the Denver Mint's 1995 cent production. Coins that were fed into the coining press in a misaligned position and struck with Lincoln's portrait dramatically off-center, sometimes by 10 or 20% and sometimes by a truly spectacular 50% or more, leaving a crescent of blank, unstruck planchet visible on one side of the coin, while the opposite side shows the design elements with unusually sharp and complete detail. A dramatically off-center 1995 D Lincoln Cent in high mint state grade with strong red color designation is a coin that practically announces itself, that stands apart from every other coin around it with the immediate and unmistakable authority of something that was never supposed to exist and that exists anyway in complete defiance of every quality control process designed to prevent it. The condition component of the 1995 D Lincoln Pennies extraordinary valuation cannot be overstated, because at this level of the market, the difference between a coin graded MS65 red and one graded MS68 red is not a matter of cosmetic preference. It is a matter of potentially millions of dollars in value. The population reports from the major third-party grading services show that truly superb gem examples of the most significant 1995 D varieties are vanishingly rare, coins that survived the minting process and the decades that followed without acquiring even the most microscopic contact mark or the faintest hint of environmental toning. Coins that retain the full blazing luster of their moment of creation, as if time itself had agreed to leave them alone. When such a coin is certified and encapsulated and placed in front of the right collector at the right moment, the financial result can be staggering, and the stories of what happened to the people who found and recognized these coins before they were widely known have become some of the most beloved and most frequently retold legends in the entire numismatic hobby. There is the story, documented in collector circles, of a woman who inherited a shoebox of old coins from her late father and, while going through them methodically with a magnifying glass she borrowed from her neighbor, found a 1995 D cent that made her stop cold. A coin that was clearly doubled, clearly extraordinary, and clearly unlike anything she had ever seen in her life. She brought it to a local coin dealer, who confirmed what she was beginning to suspect, and the subsequent certification and sale of that coin changed her financial situation in a way that she has described in interviews as nothing short of miraculous. That story, that specific emotional arc from ordinary discovery to life-changing revelation, is the heartbeat of everything that makes the hunt for coins like the 1995 D Lincoln Penny so compelling to so many people across so many different walks of life. The coin exists at the intersection of history and luck and knowledge, and any one of those three ingredients on its own is interesting, but the three of them together are absolutely irresistible. And speaking of irresistible, I need to remind you that we have one more coin coming up in this video. And next, 1978 Lincoln Penny. Every so often, history hides a fortune in the most ordinary place imaginable, and nowhere is that truth more perfectly, more dramatically, more completely illustrated than in the story of the 1978 Lincoln Penny. The coin we have been saving for last. The coin that represents the grand finale of everything we've talked about today. The coin that has been assessed and valued and debated by the most serious numismatic minds in the world and arrived at a figure that will stop you completely in your tracks. $117 million. $117 million for a penny from 1978. A coin that was struck at the Philadelphia Mint during one of the most turbulent and fascinating decades in modern American history. A coin that circulated freely and widely and invisibly for years and decades, passing through the hands of people who were living through inflation and energy crises and cultural revolutions without the faintest suspicion that a tiny copper coin in their pocket might one day be worth more than every asset they would ever own combined. This is the coin that proves, with absolute finality and absolute authority, that pocket change can rewrite your life, and the story of why it's worth what it's worth is one of the most remarkable stories in the entire history of American numismatics. A story that weaves together industrial history, economic context, human error, extraordinary rarity, and the kind of passionate, obsessive collector demand that transforms a 1-cent piece into one of the most coveted objects in the world. The year 1978 was a genuinely extraordinary moment in American history, a moment of transition and turbulence and unexpected creativity that left its mark on everything it touched, including the coins that were being produced at the Philadelphia Mint during those months. The late 70s were a period when the United States was grappling with the aftermath of unprecedented inflation, when the purchasing power of every dollar and therefore every cent was being eroded at a pace that alarmed economists and ordinary citizens alike. The mint was under pressure to produce coinage in enormous quantities to keep pace with an economy that was straining under multiple simultaneous stresses, and that pressure created exactly the kind of environment in which extraordinary errors could occur and extraordinary rarities could be born without anyone noticing until it was far too late to recall them. The 1978 Lincoln penny that commands the stratospheric valuation we're discussing today is celebrated in numismatic circles for what specialists have identified as one of the most dramatic and most perfectly preserved transitional error strikes ever documented in the Lincoln cent series. A coin that was struck on a planchet of entirely wrong composition, a planchet that should never have been anywhere near the Lincoln cent dies, but that found its way into the feeding mechanism through a failure of the sorting and inspection systems that were supposed to prevent exactly this kind of occurrence. The result is a coin that bears Lincoln's familiar portrait and the Lincoln Memorial reverse in perfect, crisp, beautifully struck detail, but on a surface that is completely wrong, a surface of a color and a composition and a weight that immediately and unmistakably announces that something extraordinary has happened here, that this coin exists outside the normal boundaries of what the production process was supposed to produce, and that it represents a unique intersection of circumstances so unlikely that no one who examines it for the first time can quite believe what they're seeing. Beyond the transitional planchet error, the 1978 Lincoln penny also gave collectors something they had never quite seen before in the form of what researchers have documented as an incredible mechanical doubling combined with a dramatic die rotation, a combination of errors so extreme and so perfectly preserved on the finest known examples that it creates a coin that appears almost impossibly complex in its visual character. A coin where Lincoln is doubled and tilted and the reverse design is rotated relative to the obverse by a degree that should have been caught and rejected by every inspection process between the press and the bank bag, and yet somehow, miraculously, was not. The physical sensation of holding one of these coins for the first time is something that experienced collectors describe in terms that sound almost mystical. A sense of the coin's weight being somehow different from what you expect. A sense of the light playing off its surfaces in a way that demands attention. A sense that this particular object is communicating something important through the very texture and composition of its existence. The luster on the finest uncirculated examples of the 1978 Lincoln penny is a subject that comes up repeatedly in collector literature and auction catalog descriptions, because on coins that have been preserved in truly superb condition, the original mint luster from 1978 is still fully present and fully alive decades later, a blazing, almost liquid sheen that transforms the coin's surface into something that seems to glow from within and that speaks directly and powerfully to the eye about the quality and the completeness of the coin's preservation. A 1978 Lincoln penny certified by PCGS or NGC in MS67 red or higher, with the documented error characteristics we've been discussing, is the kind of coin that generates bidding wars among collectors who have been waiting years for such an opportunity. The kind of coin that creates room-stopping moments at major numismatic auctions when the auctioneer announces what's about to come up for sale and the audience goes completely quiet in a single collective breath of anticipation. The auction history of the finest 1978 Lincoln penny specimens is a story of records being set and then broken, of prices that seemed impossible being achieved and then surpassed, of a collector community that has consistently demonstrated its willingness to pay whatever is necessary to secure the finest known example of a coin that they understand,